Hi, Taly. Thanks so much for joining me on the third Thursday webinar at GDI. So could you start by introducing yourself and explaining how Blink works?
Yeah. Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Taly, and I'm the founder of Blink, which is a new dating app that launched in New York City in December. And we are quite different from other apps in that we have no profiles, no swiping. We just have members tell us what they're looking for and when they're free, and then we set them up for 10-minute phone dates through the app where they actually get to talk to one another. So it's got a little bit of a Love is Blind twist to it, but people don't have to get engaged before they see one another.
Thank you. I've seen the show, so I can totally relate to
Yeah.
what you're saying there. So I understand the idea for Blink sort of came to you when you were eating at a restaurant a few years ago. Could you sort of tell us that story and what inspired you to create the platform?
Yeah, so several years back, I ate at this blackout restaurant. And when I say blackout restaurant, what that means is a restaurant where you can't see anything, literally nothing. They take your phones, your watches, anything that creates light. You can't see your hand in front of your face. And I thought it would just be kind of a cool experience to see what it's like to eat in that sort of environment. But what was really kind of revelatory about the experience was the experience of getting to know strangers without seeing them first, talking to them, having dinner with them, having no idea what they looked like. And I had an amazing evening, great conversation. And I saw the people that I was sitting with after the dinner ended outside the restaurant. And I realized I never would have talked to them had I seen them first. I would have assumed we'd have nothing in common. And there was nothing wrong with them. I just, we make assumptions based on appearances, based on style, based on skin color, tattoos, piercings. And we make those assumptions every day in the dating context, outside the dating context. But in dating in particular, what it's come to over the past decade of having online dating apps is this world where we're swiping on people in less than 1 second. And you typically, statistically, we're doing that based on attractiveness and race. Now, love isn't blind. I don't believe that it is, but you're also not going to find your soulmate based on a 1 second glance at a photo that might not even be an accurate representation of them. So the goal for Blink is to help people actually see whether or not they're interested in continuing to get to know one another beyond just a photo, and like have a conversation, see a photo, and then decide, are you still interested? And so I also realized, in my own life, I never would have swiped right on the person that I'm with because he wouldn't have checked the boxes for a profile either. And that happens so often. I talk to so many people who are like, I almost swiped left on them, but I didn't. And now here we are a year later, or he's not my typical type. And somehow I fell in love. And so I just want to give people the opportunity to find those connections because we're, missing out on them pretty often.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really interesting because I think, as you say, people are making sort of very big decisions based on a 1 second glance at someone. Potentially you could be swiping left on your perfect match because they doesn't appeal to you in that very superficial sense of you seeing their like first photo when they come up. I think sort of linking to that, I guess a key philosophy behind Blink is that this superficiality is sort of not very useful, not very effective in the dating market, and actually something that we could think about is sort of rehumanizing the entire dating experience. Could you talk about a little bit as well as like the kind of that philosophy that you have?
Yeah, so online dating today has become super transactional, and that has had some pretty negative impacts on how we socialize. It's one of the reasons ghosting has become so common. Like now I don't have to think twice about just disappearing on this stranger because there's no accountability. And it just, they're not part of your life in a way that really feels human. Like if I've messaged with someone for a week, do I really feel any obligation to respond to them? Pre-dating apps, we would meet people through work, through friends, through family, and we had that level of accountability. It wasn't just a transaction. And so it's just really changed how we think about the people that we interact with in a negative way. And it has beautiful elements too. Don't get me wrong. Like online dating expands the people that you can meet in a way that nothing else has thus far. But it would be great to be able to do that while still having the elements of accountability and humanization. And so instead of just having a profile that's just like a baseball card on your screen, actually talking to someone changes the, feelings that you have just in terms of interpersonal relations. So look, you're not going to meet your person on your first date. That's just not, some people do, they get very lucky, but for the most part, you're not. And wouldn't it be great if while we go through this process of dating and getting to know each other, we still feel good about ourselves, about each other, like you've spoken to someone for 10 minutes, it feels a lot more of like, okay, you know, this was a great conversation, but you know, I just don't think we have much in common, which is totally fine to say, rather than just ghosting them, or just like, again, seeing them as a number on a screen or a line in your inbox. So part of the goal with Blink is to rehumanize dating, to bring people together in those connections, even if they're not, you know, the connection, it's still a more pleasant experience because it reminds you that you and they are human, and kind of both trying to find this beautiful thing that we think of as love.
Yeah, and I think that's a really nice segue into talking about actually, how Blink works and the kind of 10-minute phone calls and things like that that people are going on. And I think one thing that I sort of identified with Blink so far, I saw that there's a 29% match rate after users speak with each other on this kind of call. So, is having these calls kind of the way to bring back that accountability that you're talking about? And why do you think the match rate is particularly high? I think 29%
Yeah.
is a really impressive number. So yeah.
And to clarify, it's 29% after the conversation and photo. So it's got the substance and the attraction component to it. And I think there are a few reasons why it's so much higher than match rates on other apps, which are just based on photos and profiles. And that's because, one, we see photos differently once we've spoken to one another. You might see a photo of someone really attractive on another app and be like, yes. But if you talk to them, you'd be like, oh, we have nothing in common. We really can't carry a conversation. Like, no. But you also might have an amazing conversation with someone that on a dating app, you'd be like, I'm feeling like, let's swipe left. I'm not really feeling it. But once you've spoken to them, it like kind of opens up your eyes in a new way. You're like, this person is really funny. So yeah, their photo might not be like the hottest person I've ever seen, but they're kind of cute, and I'm, want to keep getting to know them. And so it just, from like without even us thinking about it from a psychological perspective, we're just going to see things differently once we have spoken to someone. The other piece of this puzzle is that other dating apps have a binary yes, no, either you're in or you're out. Getting to know someone is more gradual than this binary yes no process, where we're like, I want to keep getting to know them, I'm not sure yet. We have a maybe option in Blink where people can say, maybe I'd be interested, depending on how they look, or I'm really interested after the conversation, but maybe I'm interested after I see the photo. It adds a little bit more nuance to this process of matching, which in other worlds is like, again, snap judgments, yes, no, black and white. The experience of getting to know one another, it's not black and white. Like we need a little bit more flexibility. And so that's one of the reasons we've built that into the process. And one of the reasons we see more matches, because we're letting people explore those connections that might not fall into a black and white box of yes or no.
Yeah, I think you've highlighted two really interesting psychological kind of phenomenon that happens. The first is, as you just mentioned there, that this maybe option, it kind of highlights that in people's minds, when they develop a connection and compatibility with someone, it isn't always immediate, it isn't always black and white, as you say. So having that maybe option kind of allows people to kind of grow at their own pace, their feelings to grow at their own pace. So I think that will also kind of lead to further matches as people kind of are able to explore that further. And I think the other thing is that, as you say, like after speaking with someone, after a great conversation, they might actually seem more attracted to you or seem more appealing to you than if you just saw their photo with no context, with no idea about their personality. So I think, Blink has kind of touched on these two really interesting sort of phenomena that maybe hasn't been explored as much in other platforms. So thank you. That's really, really interesting kind of way to start the webinar. And I think now just like to talk more about Blink is kind of as a business, as a startup as well. So could you tell us about the kind of early stages now where you're trying to increase brand awareness about Blink? What do you think have been some really effective strategies or methods you've deployed so far?
Yeah, so I do a lot of in-person touch points in terms of marketing, and that's, to be honest, partly because of capital constraints. I don't have money to throw at giant billboards in, New York City. And so what I end up doing is going to bars and for various events, or partnering with businesses that are hosting events to reach people there. And I think what's really powerful there is that people get excited when they realize that they're not just, a cog in the wheel, and that on Blink, they have direct access to me as the founder, who they've now met in person. And I think, I've had people email me about product feedback and they're like, I know this isn't as sophisticated as Hinge, and no, it's not. Like, we're not there yet. We don't have we don't have millions of dollars. But I feel like somebody is really trying to make a difference and really trying to move the needle. And I love that I can talk to you directly. And so I'm going to keep using this because I feel like I'm part of like this new wave. And I think that can be really, really powerful. It isn't scalable, but in these early days, I think, especially in this time when people are kind of jaded about dating, I meet so many people that are like, I don't use any apps. I'm tired of them. And it's even in those scenarios, it's like, do I try to convince them or do I just say, you know what, that's totally valid? And it sort of depends on the context, but I think it's just powerful to meet people in person and to show them like how we're different, what we're trying to do, and that there's a real person behind the scenes that's trying to make it better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you mentioned there about in-person touch points as well, I think the sort of platform does sort of communicate something or take something from that in-person experience because you're in these 10-minute conversations, right? So I think that's the kind of audience as well. People who like that in-person experience, they can do that. They can have that kind of similar experience with Blink, but
Yeah.
also with the improvements that doing it digitally has. So
Right.
yeah, great. And we touched on real life experiences there. Is that something that you're looking to explore with Blink moving forward? Do you think that's a important trend that we should be looking out for this year?
I would love to have this sort of real life experience, kind of like Love is Blind, but with the blackout component where people are getting to go through this dating process. Because there's something really special about getting, like, you strip off your insecurities when like just visual isn't a cue for yourself, for other people. And so I would love to be able to offer that experience to people. Is it something that we'll be able to do in 2023? I don't know yet, but it would be a dream if I could.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to create that blackout experience that you had, which started the whole thing off.
Yeah.
So that would be a nice kind of full circle. I think another aspect of the marketing that I found was that Blink actually has an animal mascot. So could
Yeah.
you tell us about that and sort of why you decided to create this figure?
Yeah. So a couple of reasons. The animal mascot is a sloth. Its name is Slow. And the reason I was like, I need an animal mascot is I worked at a company that had a mascot that was an animal. It was a dog. They made stickers, t-shirts, everything, and people loved it. Like, people just, it feels a lot sweeter than a heart, which is nice and imagery. And, our logo is this racing bee heart. But I think just the component of an animal, like, people just feel like there's a warmth to it, right? And I chose a sloth because as much as Blink is like a speed date, the process of getting to know someone is a little slower and more gradual, and you're actually, getting the chance to connect. And so it's a slower process than on another dating app where you're just swiping, mindlessly. And so it's kind of this combination of speed and gradual thoughtfulness. And it just is kind of like a reminder to people to take, enjoy that process, take it slow, get to know people instead of just, make that split-second decision.
Yeah, and no, the mascot definitely has a lot of symbolism, I think, and I think people who see it, I think they'll understand that is sort of representing this kind of slower dating process, which is totally fine. I think I think one thing that Blink has done is that it's allowed people to move at their own pace, as I mentioned before, and I think there's no kind of um, rush element that sometimes makes people feel uncomfortable, that can tire people out. Yeah,
Right.
so thank you so
The
much.
irony is that in our feedback, because you're not swiping on profiles and people just say like, I'm looking for X type of person and I'm free on Monday, it's much faster to get to a match, to a conversation, than it is on other apps. And people tell me that it's much faster than to take it offline. So there's like an irony in the sloth, I know, but like the gradualness of talking to someone and like taking that time. So it's this like mix of speed. And I don't know if there's a better animal, but I think the sloth is really cute. So I'm happy with the sloth.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice, and yeah, I think totally so interesting that there's this kind of different pacing and how sometimes rushing people might not actually lead to the experience that people want or the kind of date that people want. Yeah, it's a really fascinating kind of concept there. I think
Right.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
so in terms of Blink now more as a business, as a startup. So you've received investment funds from an organization that is helping female startup founders. That's a really great initiative. So, people who maybe listen to this webinar, they've got their female founders themselves, looking to create a startup or already in that journey. So, could you tell us about that process of starting Blink, finding these investment funds, and just generally your advice maybe for women in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think, my advice might have like it has the pros and the cons. So the pro is that being a woman founder, there is a lot of talk about wanting to support women founders. There are VCs that focus exclusively on women founders, and Graham and Walker, the one that invested in Blink, is one of them, and they are amazing. I think the downside is the reality that even so, only 2% of funding goes to women founders, and women, focused funds, I feel like almost it's riskier for them. Like they have to be more conservative in their approach because they are reporting, to LPs. And it's just, I guess the advice is to know that it's not you when you're struggling, to know that it's going to be hard, but the fact that you're doing it says so much about your courage and your conviction, and you should just lean into that. And you're going to get 1,000 pieces of advice. So take the ones that fit you. And if my advice doesn't fit, that's totally fine. But just know that when you talk to people and you tell them what you're doing, everyone's going to have their own idea about whether it's right or wrong, whether it's working. It's not personal. And you should, again, know that what you're doing is you're doing it for a reason. Make sure that you're who you should really be trusting are your customers, in terms of what you're building and how to build it. So just have faith and know that, you're doing amazing things just by doing what you're doing. And it's going to be hard, but you're still badass for doing it. I hope it's okay to say that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think totally. I think that's a totally positive sentiment to have. And I think, as you said, it's not the best environment out there. It could be improved, but I think you've just got to make the most of what's available. And I think, happily fortunately there are some funds out there that are helping women. So I think, yeah, definitely, yeah. I think look out for those if possible. And I think, generally, I also want to ask about the online dating industry and sort of your experience joining this industry. How have you found that? And has it been kind of smoother than you expected, or has it been more difficult than you imagined to try and join this world of online dating?
I think a bit of both. I think it's been a lot easier in some ways than I expected. Like when I get emails from members telling me about dates they've been on, about having conversations that are better than, ones that they've had in months, like I feel amazing. And it makes the hard days, the long hours, it makes every moment worth it. But on the other hand, it can be really hard to be a woman in this space. I think a lot of it's just very different to build a dating app as a woman than it is as a man. I see other apps that are out there that are built by men that feel like they're also for men. And so building something as a woman, it's just different. And, that's not a good or bad thing. It's just different. And when I do marketing, I think the most challenging thing is like navigating this, being in the dating industry with daters. You get hit on a lot, and it can be stressful because I'm not actually dating, and I don't want to be off-putting, but I also don't want to lead people on. And it's this awkward place to be where people are like talking to you and then they ask you like, so are you dating? Like, are you on the app? Can I get your information? And then I have to say no, but I also want them to use my product. And that kind of sucks. And I don't know I doubt men encounter this quite as much. And I don't know, it's not my favorite part of it, because I really want to offer something that's amazing and incredible, but that I am not the product, like for lack of a better way to put it. So that's something that's not my favorite part and a little harder than I expected.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really honest kind of
I hope it's not too
reflection
honest.
No, I think that's a really kind of honest reflection of a challenge as a startup founder. And I think thank you for sharing that. And I think one thing I wanted to touch on was you mentioned there that sometimes apps feel like they're made by men for men.
Yeah.
Are there kind of any particular elements of Blink that you feel are more balance for men and women, or something that maybe as a woman going through dating that you feel like was really important to bring into the Blink?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of Blink is that it offers really kind of unique value propositions to the different demographics, and thinking just in the heterosexual context, for women, it offers the chance to like really get to know if somebody is intentional or not, serious or not. And that isn't to say all women are looking for that, but for those who are, it can be really hard to assess intentions on other dating apps. And by dint of it being, you know, a 10-minute commitment, you're already seeing that somebody is willing to put in the effort to get to know you and isn't just there to mess around. For men, if you're not in the top 10, 20% of men, if you're not over 6 feet tall, if you're not super fit or have a great pedigree or great job that says I have a lot of money, like it can actually be fairly hard to match on other dating apps. And that's partly because of the way dating apps are built. There's nothing wrong with men. There's nothing wrong with some of these criteria for how people date. Again, love is not blind. But if you're not in that top 10, 20% of men, you're not getting a lot of matches. You're not getting a lot of dates. And what this offers is a chance to just cut through all of that and be like, this is who I am as a person. This is what I have to offer. I'm really funny. I'm really curious. You don't get the opportunity to show those experiential attributes on other apps. And so from my perspective, one of the things that I can offer as a woman founder is this more thoughtful approach to the different problems people have, not to sound like overgeneralized, not to overgeneralize, but I think women tend to have greater empathy for people who are different than them because we've had to navigate a world that isn't built for us, whereas men don't have that same challenge. So I think it's just bringing that thoughtfulness of different people's needs, the benefits that can be offered to different demographics, and making sure that everyone feels safe and that there's a value for them in what's being built.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting you mentioned there that actually with Blink there's sort of different value propositions for different groups, as you mentioned. I think intentions has been a really hot topic in online dating recently, because I think matching with people who have different intentions to yourself, I think that's a really common cause of frustration. And I think a 10-minute call with someone, I think it might be even longer than some people's first dates, because right, because forcing people to talk and have this conversation and be accountable, I think it definitely kind of weeds out certain people, and I think that's a benefit to certain groups. And then also, as you say, for men, being able to kind of highlight what maybe they feel is their most valuable feature, which is their personality, and other things like their job or their height, whatnot, they might not see as their most valuable personality trait or feature themselves. But with Blink, they're able to kind of express themselves and be with themselves, and they don't have to be restricted by other filters that maybe society has put on. So really interesting. Thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah.
Right, and I think now sort of want to talk a little bit about 2023, and I think Blink is still kind of in its early stages. You sort of launched on Valentine's Day, if I'm not wrong. So sort of looking ahead to 2023 now, what are some plans or goals that you have for the year ahead? Do you have any targets or objectives or new things you want to bring to the platform this year?
So we did our beta launch in New York in December, but product on launch on Valentine's Day. And what I'm hoping for 2023 is to really use all of the things that we've learned in the past few months to really expand the experience, build our user base, reach more people. I'm fundraising now so we can really expand the marketing work and the product work that we're doing. We have so many things that we want to do as part of the experience. So one thing that's really incredible is that because the dates are happening on the platform, because we're getting feedback about people about, after each date, because people are giving feedback about each date, we have a way better sense of what people are looking for and ways that people can find it than other apps would. And so one thing I want to be able to do is offer kind of personalized dating insights and coaching through the app. Whether that's 2023 thing will depend on, how long this fundraising process takes and when we're able to onboard people who can assist us in building this vision. But the goal is to really help people date better, enjoy the process more. We see dating, the success of dating is seen as I met my person, but really dating is a whole journey to get to that, right? That's the end point for some, not for all, obviously. Relationships come and go, they come in seasons. But the successes can lead up to that. You can have little successes every day, whether it's a good conversation, a connection that isn't your person, but is still going to be a beautiful component of your life. And I want to offer those small successes to that on the way to the big success. And so my goal is to build a platform that enables that. And, I think we're already on our way, but there's a lot more that we want to do to make that, happen for everyone.
Yeah, it all sounds really exciting. I can't wait to hear about some of the sort of new things you're looking at. The coaching, for example, sounds really interesting. I think that's something that I think singles and people looking to connect, I think they would really value that. So yeah, all really exciting developments. And sort of other exciting thing happening soon is our conference, and you'll be speaking in New York on the 29th and 30th of March. So yeah, great to have you there. But for maybe people who aren't able to come to the conference, how can they find out more about you and follow developments at Blink?
Yeah, so they could find us at our website, which is theblinkdate.com. We're also The Blink Date on socials, on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're most active on TikTok and Instagram. If you want to send me a DM there, I'm the person answering those messages, so don't be shy. And people can also find me on LinkedIn if they want to send me a note. My name is a little long, so I'm sure it'll be somewhere written down, but it's Taly Matiteyahu. I'm always happy to talk to people about their dating experiences and what could be better.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention they could also find us on the App Store for Android or iOS. So if they look up Blink Date and they want to try it, that's also fabulous.
Great. Thank you again. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you in New York.
I'm excited to see you too. Thank you for having me today.